Welcome to the Valley Today, a public service presentation of KAIL-TV. In 1983, a huge earthquake hit and destroyed much of Colinga and its downtown. It was 6.5 magnitude on the Richter scale and felt from Los Angeles to Susanville. Join us as we visit with Glenn Mitchell, who witnessed the devastation 30 years ago in Colinga. It's up next on the Valley Today. And welcome to the Valley Today. With us is Glenn Mitchell, and we are at the R.C. Baker Museum in Colinga, and our subject matter today is the 1983 Colinga earthquake, which was major.
Yes, it was a turning point in the history of this community, Bob.
Yeah. And you've been in this community half your life. You've been a teacher here. What year did you start teaching in the Colinga system?
I started in the year 1975. So at this point in time, I have taught those students, I have taught their children, and I'm getting dangerously close to having taught their grandchildren
also. And you're retired, but you still substitute teach.
Yes.
You probably volunteer a couple of days a week, right?
I do.
Yeah.
Like to lend a helping hand.
Yeah. Well, that's great.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. In 1983, this earthquake struck here at about 4 in the afternoon.
4:42 to be precise.
Yeah. And what day was that? Do you remember the day?
It was a Monday.
It was a Monday.
Monday.
Yeah.
May 2nd, 1983. And it was an uplift of, there's a long name for it. It's called the reverse fault on the Colinga anticline ridge. In layman's terms, basically way down deep underground, the pressures under there have formed a hump like a camel's back. And from some other point, some other distant point, there was additional pressures that were put on this hump, and it broke and it slipped, and that's what resulted in the earthquake. Changed everything.
Yeah, it completely destroyed the downtown as you know it, right?
Yes, yes.
I mean, and interesting, talking to you the other day on the phone, you had also mentioned that it had destroyed several hundred homes here. And a lot of people were homeless that night.
Yes.
Really, they couldn't go back in because there was probably still tremors going on and it wasn't safe for them.
Yeah. To go back a little bit, in the downtown area, a lot of the structures that were built prior to 1938 were actually built from bricks that were taken from the rubble of the San Francisco earthquake. They were brought to Colinga because at that time Colinga was flush with money from the oil boom.
Right.
And so the wooden structures in the downtown were torn down, and people who were very optimistic about Colinga and its future were building brick buildings. Those unfortunately came a tumbling down because they did not have the earthquake standards that we enjoy today. In the community itself, perhaps 1,000 homes were damaged by the earthquake. 200 to 300 of those were rendered unlivable in those 45 seconds of the earthquake. And in the community itself, about 100 people sustained injury outright from the earthquake. But the miracle of Colinga is that there were no outright deaths associated with that event. And if you know anything about earthquakes in the news, death is the rule, not the exception.
And that's astonishing that you'd have all this destruction here and not one person died.
Yes, we consider it a miracle.
Wow, that is really interesting. So you were in school when this thing hit.
Yeah, cute story. At that time, I decided that I would take a group of students and I would share some of my skills because I can play an instrument, a guitar. And I was working with a bunch of youth in order to create a stage band. And that day, at that time, we were working in the music building, pounding the drums and strumming the guitars. And I was teaching them this classic song, Rock Around the Clock. And you couldn't have timed it any better. When we strike the first note, and everything changed.
So really, this whole earthquake is really your fault.
Oh, please! It's not my fault.
Yeah.
San Andreas' fault.
It's San Andreas'
the Nunes' fault. The anticline's ridge. It's not my fault.
Yeah. When this thing hit, how much, how large an area did it affect as far as destruction? I mean, I'm sure that there were houses in the foothills and out in the valley that were affected too.
Yeah.
But
of course, the significant damage for people of Colinga was within the city limits of Colinga, but it really doesn't end there, because as your viewers well know, Colinga is an oil town. And so all of that shaking also caused the casings of the oil wells to fracture. So there was a huge expense for the oil companies also to go back and to rehabilitate all of those pumps and all of those oil wells that had been previously in service.
The San Francisco earthquake in, was it 1906 or 1908?
I'm going to say 06.
You're going to go say 06. I think it was 06 too. Charles thinks it's 08. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But when that happened, there were two things that happened. First, the earthquake destroyed buildings, and then as a result of the earthquake, it shattered gas pipelines, and then they had all these fires all over San Francisco, which was the second part of the destruction. Did any of that happen here?
Yes, we did have a fire, and that was in the downtown area. There was a restaurant locally, very popular, called the Coalinga Inn. And
is that down by the college?
Closer to the downtown area. From where we're at, perhaps
3 blocks down?
3 blocks as the crow flies. It did burn, and of course there was a big response to suppress that fire. People in the residences, of course, were also worried about fire. So when that earthquake happened, one of the first orders of business is to shut the gas lines off, to extinguish the pilot lights, and then to turn the water off. One of the things that we learned as a result of the Colinga earthquake is that if you turn the water supply off to your water heater so that it's not getting anything from the municipal supply, you open the vent at the top of the water heater, everybody who has a water heater will have at least 30 gallons of drinkable water at their disposal.
Interesting. And you've got an example here of what was this Anheuser-Busch?
Yes.
And tell us what we're looking at here.
This is earthquake water. Now, I had mentioned that if you turn off the water heater and open up the vents and everything, you'd have a supply of drinking and cooking water. Not everybody knew that in those days. And what happened was, as a part of the emergency relief effort, Anheuser-Busch down in the San Fernando Valley ceased operations, the beer production, and they converted their facility into supplying free quart bottles of purified water that were brought up by truck to the parking lot at West Hills College. And every citizen, who needed water, was free to go up there and take what you needed. And as it turned out, people were very good about that. Since they were generous, you could take as much as you wanted. People took what they needed, which is another testament to the high quality of folks around here.
And this is a survivor. This is one that hadn't been opened.
One of the few survivors of it.
So that's earthquake water.
This is earthquake water. 30 years old, which in human terms is quite a while. In geological terms, maybe not so much.
So it's vintage now.
It is vintage stuff. Guaranteed to have a kick.
Wow, very interesting. So after the earthquake, how long did it take for town to get normal again?
Well, that's a fair question. In the aftermath of the earthquake, since a lot of people had experienced damage to their property, some significant, I mean, their homes had to be razed to the ground, then FEMA came in, Federal Emergency Management, and many people were lining up to go through the FEMA process. The hope was that somehow or other they were going to be given grants, or they were going to be put on the fast track to be able to rebuild their homes and get things back to normal. What we found out was that what FEMA was offering were basically loans. So if you had suffered damage and the insurance company wasn't going to cover it and you were going to go to FEMA to get a loan, what it meant was that you were going to be owing somebody a lot of money for a very long time.
Yeah.
In other words, there weren't any real giveaways like that for the property owners. Some homes, again, were taken all the way down to the ground. Some businesses were. And even today, if you're looking around Colinga, you can see there are empty lots, which we refer to as places for infill.
Those were homes that were taken down after the earthquake, and then
Yes.
they weren't rebuilt after that.
That's right.
Yeah.
On the other hand, there was an influx of money, there was an influx of interest, because the citizens of Colinga, the government of Colinga, bet on ourselves. We said, we can fix this. We can come back better than ever.
Yeah.
And so they rolled the dice. People elected to stay in town, and we rebuilt the city, and I would argue bigger and better than ever before.
Now, you had a home in Colinga too, right?
And I still
How was
do.
that affected?
In my home, it was well built on good land, but what I did lose, like many other people in town, was my fireplace, the chimney. A curious thing happened there. Insurance companies found there was a loophole which was called third-party neglect, which meant that if they were insuring a structure that actually wasn't built to code and that structure failed, the insurance company was still on the hook to pay off on it because I had been paying premiums to the insurance company all along.
Yeah.
The quake of '83 caused the insurance companies to reassess that, and they have closed that loophole. So if you have a substandard construction on your property and it fails in an act of God, a seismic event, you should not expect the insurance company to bail you out.
Yeah. We're out of time on this segment. See how fast time flies?
It does.
When you're having fun. What do you call this contraption?
Well, this is an early oil field walking beam. It's an oil extraction device. They don't make them like that anymore.
Yeah. Well, the environmentalists will be upset because we would have used all that wood.
I think so. There's not a knot in any of it.
And really, the oil is what really built Colinga.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oil was a significant part of Colinga's past. For Colinga's future, we're really looking to diversify. We still have the oil. Nobody thought that the oil fields would last as long as they actually have.
Right.
It's been well over 100 years and they're still producing. But Colinga's diversifying. We're into agribusiness. Of course, we have our Claremont Return to Custody Center. The state of California has been very good neighbors. We've got the correctional institutions that are here. They're a little bit closer to the freeway. We're not hedging our bets on any one thing. And of course, like any other community, we're looking for that next new thing, and we'd like to be a part of that also.
Yeah, and really your education system here is pretty on track too. I mean, not only do you have an outstanding elementary school and high school, but you've got the junior college here.
Thank you for saying so.
So you can bring that all the way up, and I think you called it the 14th grade.
That's right. Everything from preschool to the 14th grade,
Yeah.
and you don't have to leave town.
Right.
What a deal.
Oh, I know. This is such a tight community. It really is an interesting and a marvelous community that you live in here.
It is. And thank
Yeah.
you for saying so.
You're right. Now the downtown, which took the brunt of this earthquake in 1983, has primarily been rebuilt now, right?
That's correct. A lot of it was with redevelopment agency money, and that money bankrolled the reconstruction of the downtown area, and it also put into place a kind of business opportunity where entrepreneurs could come to the downtown area and they could move into buildings that had already been constructed for a relatively low amount of rent and get themselves established, with the idea and the hope being that once they got a customer base, that they could move out and populate yet another part of the community, and then another new entrepreneur could come in and start the process all over again.
I can imagine that first city council meeting after the earthquake had to be a doozy, with people saying, well, I think I want to move away, and the city's future uncertain at that point. But you guys have rallied and done well, I think.
Yeah, there were a succession of interesting council meetings, I guarantee you, after that. But once again, Colingans looked around, they saw what was left over, they saw what they had in the first place, and they rolled the dice and they bet on themselves again. And so, just like the mythical phoenix, that bird
rose
rising
from the ashes.
That's right.
Yeah.
So here we are, and we're proud of it.
Isn't that excellent?
Yeah.
So now that you're retired, what are you doing with your time?
Well, I still serve the community in whatever capacity I can. We had just experienced celebrated our centennial, and I was the author of this slim volume. This is the history of Colinga. I had entitled it Echoes Across an Antique Land, and this is 100 years of Colinga's history.
Wow. Pictorial and short stories about what has brought Colinga from its inception to modern time, right?
That's exactly right. So I've produced that, and I've stayed active again in the community. And just for fun, I like to fly big kites. So when the wind is right, that works for me.
And the wind blows. When it blows over here, it doesn't mess around.
Yeah, it does.
So is this available to the general public?
Yeah. Colinga Area Chamber of Commerce has these.
Okay.
And if you give them a buzz, I'm sure they can set you up with one of these.
Yeah.
Custom made for people who like historical photos. My friendly advice: get the book, look through it, and then go back and look at it a second time, but this time with a magnifying glass, because there's a lot of wonderful little hidden things that you don't see the first time around.
And it was interesting when we were talking earlier about the pictures from the 1983 earthquake. I had mentioned that they were all in black and white, and your comeback was that, well, the detail is finer with black and white than it is with color.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that.
And I would argue there's probably a bit more art in it, in the black and white photography, than the color photography.
I asked you this on the other segment, but how long did it take Colinga to become normal again after this whole thing just destroyed the downtown and destroyed many of the people's homes that lived here?
Oh my gosh.
Would you say a good year? A couple of years?
Longer, 5.
Yeah?
Anyway, just to get back on its feet.
Yeah. And for the people that were displaced that couldn't go back to their homes, what did they do? Did they go to stay at friends' houses, or did they fill up the hotels here? Or?
No, we had a trailer park which is built just along the road that we're adjacent to.
Oh.
And those displaced families.
And FEMA brought those in?
FEMA brought those in.
Yeah.
And some people moved there and stayed there. Many others, most others, had their homes rebuilt to higher and better standards.
Sure.
And they moved back into town.
Yeah. So how long was this trailer park camp going on?
It's still going.
It is?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
30 years later?
Yes.
It is still going?
It's still going.
Because some people have just not gone back to their homes, or?
They made a new life there. The location was right for them, the rents were right for them, and
well, it's free, isn't it?
That's where they stuck. So.
How interesting.
Yeah.
What else would you like to add about this 1983 earthquake? Your perspective.
Hope we don't have another one anytime soon.
But I'm sure that the old timers, all the guys and girls that went through this in 1983, I'm sure every time there's a little earthquake here, I'm sure they get a little nervous, huh?
Well, the first thing that we all need to understand is that if you're going to live on a living planet, as opposed to a cold, dead, lifeless one like the moon, if you're going to live on a living planet, you're going to have earthquakes, because that's just part of the geological process. We live in an extremely beautiful state, but we live on the edge of a continent, and one of the prices that we have to pay for that beauty is that from time to time we are going to experience earthquakes.
Yeah.
In the case of Colinga, we're 25 miles as the crow flies from the San Andreas Fault. So we expect there's going to be seismic activity. Certainly, we hope nothing on the scale of the 6.7 magnitude quake that we had in 1983.
Yeah.
But it is, in fact, a fact of life.
Where was the geographic center of the quake?
It was, Bob, it was a bit north and west of town in an area that we would refer to here in town as the Coalinga Nose unit.
Okay.
And that was Union Oil property.
Okay. So it's where they were extracting oil from.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's where the Anticline Ridge is.
Did the deal with oil wells change after this happened? Did it collapse some oil wells?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it did.
I know it collapsed some casings, so they had to put new casings down. But
Right.
did it affect the quality of the oil itself in the ground?
I think not. If anything, it may have shaken some oil from those tar sands and maybe created an abundance of oil. But more technically, in order to keep those oil fields alive, Colinga has been involved in secondary and tertiary oil recovery. In plain language, what that means is that you have a number of oil pumps and you pull one of those out and you replace that oil pump with steam injection. You blow this hot steam down into the oil sands, and this melts, loosens, and forces what's remaining underground to those other pump jacks.
Yeah.
They're on timers, so it's a methodical type of extraction. But we're still pulling oil from the ground.
Yeah, that's
After
good.
100 years, I'm amazed.
Now, is that considered fracking? Because I know that they're doing injection, but I think it's steam and chemicals. So I think that what you're talking about is different than what the environmentalists are complaining about right now.
Right.
Because I think of water quality issues for one thing.
That's true.
Yeah.
What I do know is that we have a tremendous appetite for petroleum products. What most people don't know, and if I get up on my soapbox, what I would say is that our modern world could probably get along without oil for fuel a lot easier than we could get along without plastics.
Yeah.
Modern life depends on plastics.
Again, the oil boom has been responsible for the new discoveries in plastics also.
That's right.
Because that's what has created plastics.
So as the next greatest technology comes along and we can reduce our dependence on oil for the purposes of fuel, then we would have these resources to continue our modern lifestyle and continue to produce things in plastics industries.
Yeah. So do you see Colinga being viable and growing in the future?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a great place to come to. It's a great place to live. It's a wonderful place to raise kids. I can recommend Colinga wholeheartedly.
And it's interesting because you're not too far from getting over into the coastal range. You just keep going on 198 and you can get to Highway 25 and you can get to 101 and
that's right.
And it's really beautiful scenery as you climb out of Colinga going west.
Centrally located, we're an even split between the Bay Area and LA. We're an even split between the coast and the mountains. Come to Colinga, it's a great place to live.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you come to Colinga, come see the R.C. Baker Museum. And you could check out a copy of this book, Echoes Across an Antique Land. And this was authored by you, right?
Yes.
Excellent.